In this video, I want to talk about letting go. One of the biggest reasons why people are clunky or uncomfortable in the presentation or communication is because there's some worry in their mind. So how do we get rid of it? And how does it happen in the first place? That's what we're going to cover. So being worried or being anxious or just being thinking about something else while you communicate or present has a tangible negative effect. This is because you are not going to be present in a moment. You're going to be thinking of something else, and that can be noticed in your voice, in your eye contact, and just how you speak. The key concept here is mental permission. So the best communicators, the best presenters, they give themselves permission to focus on this and just this. Nothing else is on their mind. But the key here is, if you're worried about something, you don't give yourself that mental permission. So you're kind of stuck between both worlds. You want to communicate, but you want to be worried about this other thing. And just like any other type of multitasking, when you try to do two things at once, usually you don't do any of them well. So when you have no worries and nothing on your mind, you give yourself permission to communicate at your best. But when you are worrying about something or just thinking about something, you don't give yourself that full mental permission, and you are going to be resisting, you're going to be hesitant, or you're just going to be stuck between two intentions at the same time. So the key concept here is to make a mental decision to set it aside. That is, at some level, you have to do whatever it takes to be able to tell yourself, okay, this communication, this presentation, I'm going to focus just on it. And everything else, doesn't matter how bad or how good, is going to be set aside while I focus on this communication. In a way, it's drawing a boundary or just having the courage to say, what my brain is thinking is not relevant right now. So you kind of almost override your body and you force yourself to say, hey, whatever it is that you're worrying about, you can worry about it later. Right now, we're just focused on this communication, this negotiation, whatever it is. All of the other worries, they may be relevant, but they're not relevant to this specific part of life, to this specific time block. And it's important to notice that this type of effect is binary. That is, either you give yourself full permission to be in the moment or you don't, period. So if you're giving yourself 99% permission to let it go and to be present, but it's not 100%, then it's zero, okay? It has to be binary. Either you are fully here in the moment and you are really focused on this communication, presentation, sale, whatever it is, or you are not fully focused. It really is binary, either one thing or the other. Either you have full permission or you don't. One thing that may help here is polarizing both things. By this I mean the following. The reason why people don't let it go during a presentation is because there is a legitimate worry. For example, maybe there's a problem with your finances and you don't know if you're going to make rent. This is an extreme case, but let's take that case. So what happens is, if you give yourself permission to fully worry after the communication, it's a lot easier to give yourself permission to not think about it during the communication. In other words, it's almost like you have the communication time block and then the rest of your life. In what you're doing, you're kind of half worrying and half communicating in all of those time blocks. And what you're saying is, you're polarizing. You're saying, during this communication, I'm going to have 0% worry. And after the communication, then I can really indulge and have 100% worry. Or in other words, because you're giving yourself permission to deal with it later, you give yourself permission to not deal with it right now. But at the end of the day, you can see the principle here, right? Regardless of whatever technique you use, you have to make sure that you give yourself full permission to just focus on this presentation or this negotiation. You have to give yourself permission to fully forget about everything else. If you're still stuck in the middle and you still don't give yourself permission, you are not there yet. You need to figure out why you don't give yourself that mental permission to just do whatever you want and really let go from that worry, and you need to figure out how to remove that roadblock. And these techniques are just some examples of how to get there. And finally, something which may be obvious, but which is important to cover as well, is that worrying during the communication is not going to do you any good. In this extreme case, if you are worried about your finances and you don't know if you're going to make rent and you have a presentation that's half an hour, if you worry about it during that presentation, you are not going to solve the issue just because you're worrying. In other words, worrying during the presentation or the negotiation just makes things worse, because you do have a problem and you are worrying about that problem. But that's just one problem. But if you worry during the communication and you screw up your actual communication, then now you have two problems. In other words, if you give yourself permission to let it go and to just focus on the communication, you do have a problem in the background. But if you don't let that worry affect your communication, then now you have another problem, and one that you created actively. So at the end of the day, worrying during a communication or presentation or negotiation just doesn't help you, period. So to summarize, there may be a variety of reasons why people are worrying about something else in their life. But at the end of the day, you need to give yourself that mental permission to let it go and to set it aside, to say, hey, now it's presentation time or it's negotiation time. It's not the time to worry about anything else. And when you give yourself that mental permission, you separate the two topics. And now you can present without any worry at all. You can consider it a separation if you want, just saying these two topics are separated. I'm going to think about this one at this time and this other thing at this other time. Or you can actually polarize both situations. You can say, I'm not going to worry at all right now because I'm going to fully worry about it later on. Whatever technique you need to in order to give yourself that mental permission. And finally, remember that actually worrying does nothing to help you. It'll only maintain that problem and also create a new problem, which is that you are compromising your communication or your sale. If you've enjoyed the content, consider liking and subscribing, and also look at the channel to find more communication, negotiation, and persuasion techniques. Thank you so much for watching.